The Canon 24-70 f2.8 USM 2 series lens, probably one of the most versatile lenses that I own, and also initially one of the most unimpressive lenses. Quite frankly, at that price point, coming around $1,500 to $1,600, I was expecting, I had unrealistic expectations as a newer photographer, a beginner photographer, which is exactly why I'm glad I waited a year and a half to review this lens. I bought it just before Christmas 2018, so I have owned it for a year and a half, or roughly, and I've used it, hundreds and hundreds of times, obviously, but more importantly, it has saved my butt in a couple of pinches because it's such a useful focal range, and at f2.8 throughout the whole focal range, it's good in so many situations, whether you're indoors, outdoors, landscape, portrait, real estate, product, any kind of shoot you can think of. There's almost always a need for this focal length, and it can be a real lifesaver, and it can be a real moneymaker in a lot of ways. So I really needed to own this lens this entire time to really appreciate the value that I never could have even understood when I first bought it. So I'm so glad that I waited this long to actually do a proper review on this. So let's get started first with the build quality. Of course, you got your weather sealing gasket. I know on, for example, the Sigma lenses, this is fairly stiff and it's fairly difficult to change. This, however, is not. It's extremely easy to switch back and forth between manual and autofocus. So, if you're doing that on a tripod or something, you shouldn't get a lot of camera shake using that. It does have a locking mechanism here for the zoom to lock in place. It weighs in at 805 grams or roughly 1.77 pounds. When zooming, the front element does not rotate. It's fixed. And as for the lens hood, it's a bayonet style, and it has a very nice locking mechanism that locks it in place, and it's a single button press release. And one of the things that you will not see on this lens is image stabilization. Obviously there is no button because this does not have image stabilization. So in general, it's an extremely well-built, fairly heavy, weather-sealed lens that is fairly indestructible. This lens really saved my butt. Okay, this is, and I'm going to show you these pictures. I'm at a wedding, and I get stuck in this little rinky-dink room here. Total change of plans. This is where they had the ceremony. They weren't supposed to have the ceremony here initially, right? So change of plans. Now all of a sudden, I'm stuck in this little tiny room. So I'm thinking I'm going to be in a big church setting where I use the 70-200 and I have access all around the bride and groom, right? So I could keep my distance, use that 70-200, get them coming down the aisle, get them standing in front of the priest, get, reactions, get all these shots. Well, then they changed plans, put me in this little tiny room. I can't get around the chairs on the outside corners. Right? So I had to go up and down the middle of the aisle the entire time if I wanted to change angles and perspectives. And as you see here in this room, it's cramped. So clearly the 70-200 would have been worthless. That was my plan. So I had to change plans really quickly because they sprung this on me. And at this time, I actually didn't have the 14-24 f2.8. I only had the 24-70. First time shooting a wedding, I wasn't fully prepared. But my point is the 24-70 saved my butt, okay? And it saved their wedding photos, to be completely honest, because I went to it, I stayed with it the rest of the day. If I needed that extra range, I just cropped a little bit because on a full frame, the 24-70 was plenty sharp. It's plenty sharp to crop a little bit if you have to. But what you can't do on a 70-200 is make the shot wider, right? You could always crop. So just to be safe, I went with the 24-70 and stayed with it for the rest of the day because they were changing plans and we were altering based on just random events. We're changing our plans. So I said, screw it. Staying with the 24-70, had it on the 6D Mark II. One one very important thing I want to talk about with this lens is if you have the T7i, which a lot of my viewers do, and which I started with, I felt that the images from this were very unimpressive on the T7i. I felt that they weren't very sharp. The f2.8, I wasn't taking full advantage of the f2.8 on the crop sensor. I wasn't getting the benefits that it offers on a full frame. I felt that I did a video on it actually. I didn't feel like the 24-70 was even a whole lot better than the kit lens on the T7i. Certainly not worth the $1,600 that you'd pay for it. Okay, fast forward to the 6D Mark II, and that now we're talking entirely different ball game. It's an entirely different lens on the 6D Mark II, which it makes sense. It's a full frame. So if you have the T7i or an entry-level crop sensor, I don't think this lens is going to be very beneficial to you. And then another thing I want to add is video on this. I'm using it right now. The video was some of the clearest, sharpest video that I've ever gotten out of the 90D. It's as clear, if not more clear, than the Sigma 18-35 I felt on the 90D. Again, I want to emphasize on the 90D. I did not have the same results on the T7i. On the T7i, I felt that the Sigmas were substantially sharper. I see so many reviews where people are like, hey, look at this lens I just bought. I had it for 3 days. This is what I think about it. Well, this lens you really can't do that with because it takes a long time to really get to the point of appreciation with this lens where you're like, wow, that thing just saved my ass. And it's because it's extremely well built, because I could take it anywhere, because its focal length is extremely useful, because it gives a beautiful image. It is truly the all-around most important lens that I own. All right, guys, thank you for watching. Have a fantastic day, and stay tuned. I'm going to keep making them. Going to keep making these videos. All right, subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Stay safe out there.